everyone, I'm Ashley Legg, and welcome to the free 30-day Leg Up Challenge to creating healthy habits to elevate your life. And this is challenge day 22 out of 30, and we've covered so many positive things, from creating your sense of routine, to drinking your water, to moving your body, to practicing self-care, to creating your positive workspace where there's fresh light coming in, to breathing the air if it's a beautiful day. And these are just healthy habits you can start implementing now that you can bring with you when quarantine and self-isolation is over. And today is a very special day because it's all about managing stress and anxiety. And I think that it's important that we talk to health professionals, and that's why Dr. Nahumck is here, who's also my cousin, and I feel really blessed that you are chatting with us today, because I think a lot of people are going to benefit from hearing from you, and also to talk about, the different issues and topics that are coming up with your clients. And also, I think for me in my community, I always like to preach not doing things alone. And so I would love to address that as well. So please welcome yourself and tell us a little bit about you, your position, and what you do to serve others.
Okay. I am Dr. Christopher Nahumck. I'm a clinical psychologist in Southern California. Right now, I've got practices in a couple different places, but generally it tends to be from home right now, doing video sessions and phone sessions with people to try to help them kind of get through this time.
How has telemedicine changed for you? Because I'm sure it's not new, but it's definitely more prominent now.
It definitely is. I was a little hesitant at first myself. I wasn't really a big fan the first couple moments. There's a lot that happens in the therapy room in the quiet moments where nothing's said. And the people that I work with who are more experienced at therapy, they have slid into this different way of being, whether it's through video or the phone, I think a little bit more effectively than people who are new, but everyone seems to be kind of adjusting. It reminds me very much of being in high school and having to make up what the other person's doing when you're talking for hours on end on the phone. So I know that there's a cohort of people who are younger than I am who may not have had that experience. And so it may be a little bit more jarring for them to just be quiet and silent for a bit. But I found it to be a way to still kind of help people and work with people. And it's been a challenge, but also rewarding and interesting at the same time.
Let's talk about managing the stress and anxiety. How have you been dealing with this personally and also with your clients?
I have been, well, there's lots of different things that I could say, much of which people have already said at length, and there's lots of good, useful information that's out there. For me personally, I know I've been trying to keep a routine. I've been trying to stay active, and I've been trying to stay social. And those things look different for different people. For me, I was running a lot, and I ended up kind of overdoing it with the running, and I've had to kind of take a break. But I know that my anxiety is helped by exercise. Everyone's going to have a different level of kind of engaging that. One thing I think is important, besides the fact that we have all this information out there that you can find, it's kind of why the process is helpful. So it's one thing to know what to do. It's another thing to know why it works. So anxiety is all about detecting threats in your environment and having a lack of control. So anything that you can do to increase your sense of control is what's going to be helpful. So your routine is helpful not because you want to stay a slave to the clock. It's helpful because it gives you an understanding of what to expect as you move forward, so that you know that I'm still going to be getting up day after day at the same time, and I don't have to worry about, well, what I think it's Tuesday. Is it April? Is it May? Is it still March? I have no idea. It gives you that sense of routine, and you know what to expect. It also lets you carve out little time for yourself. We are social creatures. That's one of the ways that we adapted to our environment, and we rely on each other to survive the environment. And that's very true currently. And everyone's going to have different levels of social engagement. So for some people, this is actually really perfect for them. They're introverts. They don't have to come up with excuses why they can't meet you at the bar or why they can't go to the movies with you. Because I get to stay home, and everyone else can, I don't have to make excuses anymore. Oh, I'm quarantined, can't go. And so it's actually extroverts who are kind of in a little bit more pain about that currently. Yeah, like why can't we hang out? I need my room full of 20 people. That it will come back at some point. In the meantime, the way that we socially engage can be really helpful. You know what works for you. I know many people who've done social happy hours, people who are connecting through whether it's using the Zoom stuff that they use during the day to then have happy hour afterwards. You know, if you have a group text on like an iPhone, you can do like a group FaceTime. We've been doing that and playing games and that sort of stuff. House parties, a thing that just came out that I'm not 100% sure how to use quite yet. But you can and should determine your own level of engagement with others, and it's going to be different too. I know, you know, I live with my wife and my son and my dog. I know you're with your husband and your two dogs. And so there's a degree to that where you have that nice social interaction. But then we also need alone time. And so, you know, sometimes it's as simple, especially if you have little kids, with making sure that you've closed the bathroom door, or, you know, you close the door to change or to make your bed. We need that time together, but we need that time apart.
So to break down some of those points you mentioned, create your routine, be
Hmm.
active, stay social, but also make time for yourself
Right,
individually.
right.
And what about, this is going a little deeper, what about those days, and I've had, you know, I probably have them once a week. I know my mom had one recently, my sister, where it's like you wake up and you're already have anxiety because you realize we're in self-isolation, or
Hmm.
you're worrying about the people on the front lines,
Hmm.
whether you know them or you're just watching the news, and you don't want to talk to anyone. You're almost feeling just depressed and lonely and just very closed off. What would you recommend to do on those days where it feels hopeless?
I would say it's okay to have a day where you feel hopeless. I would
Okay.
say it's okay to acknowledge that nothing that's happening right now is normal. We are not homeschooling now. We are trying to teach our children from home uh, at the drop of a hat. We are not working from home. We are figuring out how to work remotely in the middle of a crisis. And we really need to think about it in those terms. Um, we are all living history right now. And as we are living history, it's important to acknowledge the fact that we don't know what's going to happen, and things are uncertain, and that's okay. Um, Depression is often a natural way of dealing with anxiety, because if anxiety is your kind of, you know, running things about here, depression naturally lowers that down to make it manageable, because your body's going to burn up too much of its resources if you're anxious all the time. And so depression kind of helps kick that in. Your sympathetic nervous system is what gets activated when you have anxiety. So your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure goes up, you have adrenaline coursing through your body, your immune system actually gets down regulated, um, your metabolism slows down. Uh, all these negative things happen, and the longer you're in that, the more chances there are for long-term health effects. That's why in communities where there's poverty, where there's crime, uh, where there's lack of opportunity, they tend to have more chronic health conditions. There's lots of different factors that go into that, but stress is definitely one of them. So when you're feeling depressed on a day, um, which is different than, say, clinical depression, you would need to have more bad days than good for a period of at least 2 weeks. Um, Many people will have that at the end of this, but feeling depressed on a day does not mean that you suddenly have um, diagnosable major depressive disorder. But being depressed for one day is actually kind of a way to naturally reduce your anxiety and to make it livable for the day. And that's okay. One day of sitting on the couch eating a tub of cookie dough isn't necessarily going to be horrible. If it's day 15 of that, that's different.
I do like that, like giving yourself permission to feel those feels and have
Hmm.
those on and off days, and those bad days also help you appreciate the good ones, which
Yeah.
I'm a strong believer in. But okay, so let's talk about this blog that you recently wrote, Contemplating the Empty Tomb. And this played
Ah.
around
Hmm.
Easter, and it talks
Hmm.
about a new beginning and a new day, and what are you going to do at this new chance and this new opportunity. And I like
Hmm.
actually have goosebumps because I think, you know, this is very real for so many people. We're already looking ahead to the future because Some days we see the light when we're like,
Hmm.
oh my gosh, we're almost hitting the peak. This is almost done. But then there's other days where we don't. But how do we get excited to be revived and to just think about that new day that's going to come for all of us?
Well, it's all about controlling your anxiety, and it's about taking control. When you have control of what you can, you're going to feel less anxiety, you're going to feel more empowered. And many of us want to get back to whatever normal is. But this is actually a wonderful opportunity to re-examine what actually is normal and what do I want to keep, because we're not going to go back to what we were before. It's, as much as many people would like it, it's not going to be the same again. Maybe eventually, but we need to get used to seeing face masks in public. Face masks actually aren't to protect you, they're to protect the people around you. And I know that feels weird and it feels counterintuitive. I know that I've had trouble with like not shaking people's hands and having to keep distance. I'm a hugger. I like to get in there close and have that physical contact. Everything that I've been told about proper polite greetings is out the window now. But um, what we think of as normal after this is up to us to decide. We can't control as an individual what happens on a global scale, a national scale, um, a state scale, a local scale. But you can control what happens in your life. And so, what do you want your normal to be? You know what your routine is before this, but depending on how deep you want to get, many of the things that we've thought of as normal and typical and just are part of everyday life turns out not so much. They are actually things that are conveniences or social constructs that don't actually exist. Um, and I don't really know how long, you know, this is going to be until we find whatever the new normal is. I know that working from home has been something that people have been fighting for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And often people have been saying, no, that's not feasible. We can't do that meeting virtually. It has to be in person. All of a sudden, in like 2 weeks, 10 years of progress happened. Um, and, you know, people are appreciating teachers and how much school actually does matter for people. So I think, you know, there are going to be things that we really hold dear to and that we really want. And there's going to be other things that open up new opportunities. There's ways of working, there's ways of being that we haven't even tapped into yet. And we need to think about how we want to handle things with the fallout that's coming, because we're trying to manage the medical health aspect of things, but the economic impact is still kind of unfolding and still to come. And there are things that happened in the past that people did that are unthinkable now, but they matter and they could be really, really helpful. It used to be actually in ancient times, you know, speaking of Easter, there was every 7 years there was this thing called Jubilee, and every 7 years debts would be forgiven. It's a different way of managing debts, but you know, where's all this money coming from? You know, they're handing out all these checks and we're racking up more national debt, but
All these
everyone's in the,
forgivable loans and
yeah,
low interest loans and unemployment. Like there's just so much happening. It's
yeah.
going to be
And
interesting.
I'm not an economist. I wouldn't pretend to know anything about that, but it makes me question, you know, what is really normal there, and what have we accepted, and how do we want to structure society for ourselves? And some of it'll be good, and some of it won't, and we'll figure it out as we go. I can control. I'm someone who's, first of all, I'm someone who's given to, you know, thinking about things in big ways and big concepts and big ideas, and that often kind of it helps me because it lowers my anxiety because I forget about what's happening to me. It's why we can watch things like, I don't know, like Tiger King, and think like, well, things are bad, but I'm not on the show Tiger King, so it could be worse. It's one of the reasons why I think true crime is really possible for to be a genre that people enjoy, because like my life is bad, but at least I'm not like trapped by a serial killer. I
There's
think,
silver linings
yeah,
in every situation.
and we're all suffering, and and we can put on a happy face and embrace the suffering, but that doesn't mean that um, we don't have to like compare our suffering to other people, even though we naturally do. I feel like I'm kind of rambling at this point. So
I
what I
mean,
will say,
it makes sense. We've like led into human emotions, but
yes,
I'll sum it up just a little bit. So we had talked about, creating your routine. This can
Hmm.
all help with managing stress and anxiety, creating
Hmm.
your sense of routine,
Hmm.
staying active, being social. But if you're an
Hmm.
introvert or if you're not, still make alone time. That's just as
Right.
important.
Right.
Understand that it's okay to not be okay. Like you're
Hmm.
going to have those days that aren't going to be happy and uplifting. So feel those feels and
Hmm.
use those downtimes to appreciate the good ones. And then also to just look at your new normal and to start thinking ahead and being optimistic about the future,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Good thing? Okay.
And one other thing, when we think ahead and we want to come up with our new normal, we want to have our plan for what's coming. A lot of people entered this thinking, like, this is the time I'm going to finish that project. This is the time I'm going to start that hobby. And it hasn't started. And that's okay. We're not, this isn't like a 3-month vacation.
Yeah.
This is
We're
a
not
crisis.
superhuman. Like
Right.
you can bring it down a notch. Like you'll have those
Hmm.
days where you feel high on life, where you want to accomplish everything, but
Right.
you don't have to do that extra project. You can
Right.
save it for a time where you actually feel compelled to.
Right. And, we're not all David Goggins. It's not, um, it's not something we can just kind of force ourselves to do. We all, intuitively kind of what's a push for you, what's a stretch for you, and what's kind of outside of your reach. So I think embracing where you are is really important, and that's not an excuse to underperform, but it's also an excuse to kind of have reasonable goals that you can see progress towards, every day.
I love that. Sustainable goals without
Hmm.
feeling overpressured.
Yeah, we got enough pressure already. We don't need to pile onto ourselves and make ourselves feel even more like garbage.
Exactly. Okay, so how do people get a hold of you? Because I know you're offering consultations by phone.
Right.
And so just tell us a little bit of information about how people can reach you.
Well, right now, you can find me at drnahumck.com. That is my personal website. I've got lots of stuff there. You can find it through my Instagram account here. Um, I'm trying to be good about putting out a video a week. My motivation fluctuates as well. Um, if you go to my website, you can find a way to either email me or give me a phone call. I'm actually doing something right now with medical professionals who are working on the front lines of this. I'm doing 4 free sessions with them
Wow.
because I think it's really important to help them process what they're going through. They're going to be ahead of everybody else in kind of recognizing the impact of all this and needing to heal from it. We talk about soldiers coming home from war and the importance of making sure they're treated properly. I think this is a similar sort of thing where, I want to do my part to make sure that uh, the people who are, taking care of us are also being taken care of. So, but yeah, I also, one of the things I've noticed is people don't know what to do quite yet, and they're not reaching out for help. Part of that, I think, is we don't know what's coming. Part of that is economic uncertainty and insecurity. Um, but I also work with a bunch of people. So if I'm not the right fit, I can definitely connect people with others who are the right fit. Um, so yeah, feel free to click through and reach out.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. All of this information was super helpful, and I'll make sure to continue to share this with my community and tag you so that we can just continue to reach more and more people and help them and offer them hope and courage and strength and healing during this time of uncertainty. So thank
Yeah.
you. I appreciate you and your time and your expertise and everything that you offered us today.
Well, thank you for having me, and we'll get through this together.
I love that. Stronger together.
Yes.
Okay. Have a good day. Coast to coast. Bye.
Bye.